Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're out here in the Arizona desert test driving the 2021 Jeep Gladiator with the EcoDiesel option, something I've been very much looking forward to driving and seeing what it's all about. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a quick drive both on and off road, and I'm going to tell you what I really think. All right, my friends, before we get out on the test drive, I want to show you a few things because what we've got here is a near fully optioned Gladiator Rubicon EcoDiesel, $67,000 to be exact. Rubicon, being the off-road version, has all of the hardware and the good stuff. The red hooks on the bumper. This bumper is an optional one that is winch capable. Nice little option there if you intend to have a winch. It has the louvered vented hood, which is pretty cool looking, and also the Rubicon graphic on the side. Now normally this comes with 33-inch tires and 17-inch alloy wheels, but this is actually an optional alloy wheel, just a different style. And also on the front you're going to notice this has the LED lighting package. It's a pretty comprehensive package. Comes with LED headlights, LED fog lights, and LED taillights at the rear. As we go around the side, one thing you'll notice is this has Fox 2.0 shocks. Nice and visible. I mean, if you're going to spend money for those things, you might as well have them shiny and pretty so everybody can see them. Underneath are a full battery of skid plates that protect everything for off-roading, and that's what you're going to do, right? You're buying the Rubicon. You're not just buying it because it looks cool. I mean, you're actually going to use it for off-roading, right? Optioned on this are quite a few things, among them the body color fenders, front and rear. This is something that, well, a lot of people like the dark colored black plastic. I tend to really like the body color, especially if you get into some of the brighter colors like the oranges, the yellows, or the greens. I think that really helps it pop, yet you still do have some of the black plastic around the leading edges that help protect that from scuffs, from underbrush and things like that. Optioned on my Gladiator is something I would totally want to have, and that is the body color 3-piece hardtop. Of course it comes off. Takes a little bit of work to do that, but you can also easily remove the front parts with just twisting a couple of knobs and pulling a couple levers. Very nice, makes some nice open air driving. Also optioned on mine is the tonneau cover, and inside the bed is a very nice spray-on bed liner and the cleat system that they have. That's also a package, and in the bed a 115-volt AC outlet. Important to point out from this angle are features like the rock rails, very important for off-roading, helps protect your body from being scraped by wood, rocks, anything that you happen to be getting up against or going over the top of. And there's also a protective rail at the back that keeps that bumper cap from getting torn off. As we looked at the rear bumper, this one also showing the red hooks, which are part of the package. And this one also has the tow package, and so you see the receiver hitch. On the tailgate you see the EcoDiesel emblem. You spent the money for the diesel, all $4,000 of it, so there's a badge there to let everybody else know that you got it. And a very nice Jeep logo there on the back with red highlighting. I think that's a nice touch, kind of matches my shirt a little bit. The interior of the Gladiator is a place that I've liked before last time I test drove one, and the Wrangler as well. It's identical for the most part. And in the Rubicon, we have a very up-trimmed, and in this particular tester, a very fully optioned place. To start with the Rubicon, I've got this nice red trim applique and red trim accents throughout the interior, a lot of red stitching, especially here across the top of the dash. That's a very cool touch. The thing about the Wrangler and the Gladiator is that this interior is really made to be hosed out, so to speak. So it doesn't have the type of material quality and fit and finish you're going to find, let's say, in a Range Rover, right? This is sort of a Rubbermaid kind of deal, but what they have done is give us switchgear and controls. All of the hardware in here is of a very high quality, and especially with this sort of knurled metal finish that you see on a lot of the trims and things like that, really sort of giving it a nice upscale look, even though it is sort of middle of the road when it comes to material quality. As far as comfort goes, I'm sitting here in leather chairs. These are an option, leather seating surfaces, and they're reasonably comfortable. The chairs themselves, what tends to be a little less comfortable during the course of the day is if you drive, let's say, on a nice 800-mile trip, you're going to be ready to get out of these. The seating position here and the fact that you don't have a lot of space in this cabin does hit comfort just slightly. As I sit here and look forward, I've got a nice steering wheel in my hands, controls on the back for the audio and infotainment system, and the instrument cluster, even though it's very compact, very easy to read. I've got two traditional dials, one on either side, and a nice large digital screen in the center that lets you program virtually anything that you want on there. The center stack is very well laid out. The infotainment screen up at the top, hard controls, volume and tuning in the center, HVAC. Below the HVAC you have the window switches for rolling up and down the windows. You've got charging ports, auxiliary port. Down below that is the controls for the front and rear locking differentials, the off-road mode, the sway bar disconnect, and the lever is also down here for your transfer case, manual shifting transfer case. And whether you have the 6-speed manual or the automatic, that shift lever is going to be just to the right. This console is very well laid out in my opinion. The cup holders are directly down below in the center. They sit low enough that big tall cups from the gas station aren't going to be in your way. Storage in the center console box, very good. About 4 or 5 bottles of water are going to fit in there, and the actual height of this is even with that of the door. So if you're sitting here on a long drive, it's just got a nice feel to it. As I mentioned when we were looking at the outside, we have optioned the removable hardtop, the 3-piece, and so these 2 pieces in the front do remove. There's levers here and a few latches. You can pull those things straight out. Also here are headliner panels. Now these are just extra little bits of trim. They're very thin, they're very expensive. There's a larger one in the back and the 2 in front. A lot still exposed, however, but that is an option, oddly enough. The exposed roll cage is very well trimmed out with plastic. There's grab handles in the front, and in the back you can see the actual audio system speakers are built into all of that black plastic cladding. They've done a nice job of hiding what's not that attractive, an assemblage of metal. Back here in the rear seat, you can see that I've got plenty of leg room. These seats here are set for my height, about 5'9", with my boots on, and I've got a few inches of leg room in front of me, and even above my hat, I've got plenty of headroom, and that hat goes a couple of inches above my head, so tall people are probably going to be in pretty good shape back here. As you can see, the seating height is reasonably okay. My knees are perched up just a little bit, but the thing you got to remember is this is a pretty compact space back here. Getting in and out, this is a pretty narrow door. It's almost what I call a spice door. And I also need to point out that getting in and out around this roll cage takes a little bit of practice because you can bump your head on that thing getting in and out. So caution. And I was definitely getting my hat on it. There are some pretty good amenities as you'd expect for this price range. There are AC vents. There is a USB charge point and a 115-volt outlet down at the lower end of the console. Big cup holders there also as you pull this down. Even more cup holders there in this folding armrest. One very cool thing, these lower seat cushions do fold upward in a 60-40 split, allowing you to put big box items in here, but this one has also optioned a lockable storage area down there. Now you'll notice the size and shape of that. It is lockable, so that means that, well, it's going to be legal for guns in a lot of places. And a little bit of extra storage like that is actually a good thing because the center console is really it. The glove box, not very large, and not a lot of other storage space in this cabin. Overall, I'm very pleased with this interior. There were a few things. We can talk about things like practicality, where even though this is a Jeep, it's practical in its nature. Storage in areas like the glove box and just the overall livability of this tends to be a little bit compromised because of its size. Also the comfort levels, because we are in a smaller cabin and we do have a very upright seating position, not as high, but interior still comes in at 4.5 stars. When it comes to the infotainment system, this is the fully optioned Alpine Audio 8.4-inch Uconnect touchscreen system. Top of the line for the Jeep, and it's pretty pricey, I'll add. It has a decently sized screen when it comes to what you see here, but when you're actually using it, there's a lot of stuff jammed into one spot. I am happy about the fact that it is a touchscreen and it does have hard controls. What I was disappointed with is that the audio quality from this Alpine audio system, not that good. I actually found it to be pretty bad, especially when you look at what they're charging for this thing. It does have some good feature content. I love the trail cam, which enables you to set a front or rear view. It actually has a washer, and when you turn the wheel left or right, you can actually see tire treads out in front of you, so you can see if you're trying to pick a line through the rocks, you can actually sort of navigate that with this trail cam. That is a very cool feature. Full connectivity, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all of those things we'd expect. Overall though, the infotainment system score does get hit just a little bit by that audio quality. 4.5 stars. So the thing I always ask is, how does it go? Woo. Not bad. And 60. So this is a turbo diesel. Okay, diesels aren't known for being fast. They're known for having a lot of torque, and they get great fuel economy. So that wasn't blistering acceleration, but I did notice just a little bit of turbo lag right off the line. But outside of that, this thing's got a really nice power band and a lot of torque that really does push you back in your seat. And you did hear it, it is a diesel, but it's pretty smooth and it's pretty refined for a diesel. This engine also found in the Jeep Grand Cherokee, it's found in the Ram 1500. It's an engine that's been around for a while, and so it's pretty well proven. And along with this 8-speed automatic transmission, I have found that around town it drives very nicely. Out on the highway, it settles down to a nice purr. When it comes to fuel economy, it's rated at 21 mpg city, 27 mpg highway, and 24 mpg combined. Now, in my week with it, I got about 22, so it's not quite up to what it promises on the sticker, but my driving cycle does lean a little bit more towards city driving, more than most. So that, combined with the fact that the air conditioner was on most of the time, probably had some to do with that. A few things to point out. The towing rating on this is 6,500 pounds. That is about 1,150 pounds less than the gas V6. Typically diesels are known for their towing prowess, but in this case it's really more about saving fuel, not so much about the towing. But still, 6,500 pounds towing is pretty respectable. The one thing that really sort of lets me down about this powertrain is the fact that we have an auto start-stop system for the idle. I hate that. I hate that. If you watch my videos, you know I hate them. That said, you can turn it off, and if I were to ever buy one of these things, they have the thing that you can buy to plug it in that just shuts that thing off forever. So that's totally what I do. So when it comes to scoring this powertrain, we get 4.5 out of 5 stars, not 5, because this does have some noise, vibration, and harshness. It's a diesel, and that auto start-stop system just really kills the refinement for me. But outside of that, I just absolutely love this diesel. Before we get into the off-road bit, which is probably what most people want to hear about and see, we got to talk about what this thing's like to drive on the pavement, because that's where, well, most people are going to be driving their Gladiator most of the time. The thing to keep in mind about any Jeep like this, be it a Wrangler or the Gladiator, this is a body-on-frame truck, right? I've got solid Dana 44 axles front and rear. Now that's a very rare combination in today's market. Most every other vehicle this competes with, you're going to find an independent front suspension. Why does that matter? Well, because this thing drives like it's got solid axles, and that means it's clunky a little bit. Now they've done a great job to control that ride, but the steering tends to be a little bit nebulous. You tend to have solid axles that jump over things, so when you hit big bumps and ruts and things like that, it tends to follow those things around in the road. So there are some compromises when you get into a vehicle that's really dialed in for off-road, and that also plays into the suspension tuning. This thing's bouncy. It kind of floats around, and it kind of like, you know, it's a wagon. It's like a chuck wagon. Now, if this were any other vehicle, I'd be bitching about the handling here, but this is a Jeep, so like I said last time I drove the Gladiator, it tends to become kind of like, well, it's just part of its charm. And I hate to say it, but that's the truth. But so there is a compromise that's been made to really make this thing perform off-road, and that compromise is felt here when you're on the pavement. But without further ado, let's get off the pavement. Now that we're off the pavement, one of my favorite things to do with any off-road vehicle, an SUV, a pickup truck, is to bring it out on the desert washboard road. And that's because Even though this isn't really hardcore off-roading, this vibrating rib surface gives a lot of pleasure, right? This vibrating rib surface can make even the most expensive of vehicles feel like a complete POS. They can make a car rattle, they can make it shake. And so this is a great way to test how well put together is this thing. Is it tight? Is it solid? Is the suspension well engineered to absorb that rhythmic vibration? And what I'm finding, this thing is great. This thing just absorbs that stuff like a sponge, and I'm not getting any shuddering in the doors, rattling in the dash. And you hear a little bit of resonance through it, but it's very muffled. And that's what I like, because then you can really just sort of have fun and let her rip. The first thing I noticed when I started really getting out here on a little bit rougher road is how nicely this rides. This has got a nice, well-isolated rubbery suspension, and these Fox shocks do a great job of absorbing some of the tougher stuff, but giving the compliance that you want to have when you're out on the trail. And even though this has a longer wheelbase because of the fact that it is the pickup truck, I still find that it has a pretty level of maneuverability like you come to expect with the Wrangler. Now, not quite as maneuverable as the short wheelbase Wrangler, but you don't feel like you're driving a big, huge truck out here. The other thing I'm noting is how quiet the chassis and the suspension is going over this rough trail. A lot of vehicles I bring out here, you can hear the suspension clunking and clanking. You can hear creaking and rattling in the structure, and I'm not getting a lot of that here. As the trail starts to get a little bit more challenging, it's worth noting that in the Rubicon, there are a ton of traction toys. Now, I hate to call them toys, but there are very important things here, like the disconnecting sway bar. If we were rock crawling and doing some really heavy duty off-roading, that's great to help your articulation. You've got front and rear locking differentials, electronic, very important if you're going to be doing a lot of heavy articulation, which we're not really doing that here. In fact, I'm just in 4 high. But one thing that is very cool about this, the diesel engine, this thing can just almost idle up a very steep hill. You don't have to give it a lot of throttle to get it to move. And that's one of my favorite things about a diesel engine in an off-road vehicle. This also has the Off-Road Plus program. And with these great tires, this thing will literally crawl up a wall. So all of that, when it comes to scoring the chassis and handling, we come in at 4.5 out of 5 stars. Why not 5? Well, as we talked about on the road handling part, there were quite a few compromises made to the overall everyday driving feel to make sure this really performs off-road. Now, it's worth it, but compromises they are. So 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, my friends, let's talk about our last metric, which is value, right? Value. Now, Consumer Reports talks about value. You get your best buys and all these things, but let's look at all of the different metrics that I think make up value. You're going to see something here sticking out, and that is options pricing. This is $43,000 and some change as it sits as a base price, and it's got $23,000 of options on top of it. That changes the price quite a bit, right? Where at $67,000 is tested. That's a lot of option money. And if you look at the window sticker, Jeep is really sticking it to you for individual option prices. And I think you may have seen some of those things flow across your screen as we talked about different parts of the vehicle and what some of these options cost. And I point that out because some of these things that they're charging $800, $900, $1,000 for are things that are standard on a Toyota Corolla, okay? And that's why I start looking at that with a skewed eye. And it's just a way for a lot of car companies to make their profit back. They show you a nice base price, but if you start putting all the stuff on it that normal people want, it's $67,000 now, okay? So options pricing is a rate fest on this thing. The other thing is competitiveness. At this price, $67,000, unless you just really want a Jeep and that's what you want and that's what you're gonna get because that's the way it is, you can get a full-size pickup truck like an F-250, or you can get a Ram 2500 or a really nice Ram 1500. I mean, there's so many different options when you start spending close to $70,000 that you can get in terms of a pickup truck that has almost all the same equipment, maybe not the off-roading capabilities, but so competitiveness, we're going to knock that down a tick or two because of that reason. But again, this is a vehicle that chances are people are buying it because it's a Jeep, right? So nonetheless, value comes in at 3.5 stars. And when we put that together with everything else we've already talked about that review, we have a total grand score of 4 out of 5 stars for the review. And you know what else? This goes on my buy list. So even though it's not the best value in the world, I like this thing a lot. It's probably one of my favorite vehicles on the market right now. And if I had the money to spend, this would be in my driveway, no question about it. So I'd buy it. There you go. If you like the review you just saw, click right there, see my latest one, or better yet, click down there and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Either way, stay tuned.